Hi, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch News Update on Tuesday, May 13th. I think I'm kicking it over to Trip to start us out.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank y'all very much for having me again for this week's installment of the Beef Brunch News Update. Not just a whole lot to comment on this week. Much of what I said in our last update regarding the Northeast region still holds true. The rainfall, the rain's continued. With earthquakes and tornadoes, hurricanes, like we got the different levels of breaking it down to mark the severity or the impact of it. I think we need something like that for the amount of rainfall in an area or how wet an area is. And the scale needs to be build a boat and get in the boat. And we might not be at the get in the boat stage yet, but I'd be hunting a life jacket. We're starting to have some pretty good backwater issues. Last Friday, I was on a ranch in northern Union Parish, and they had a couple hundred acres underwater, and grass was starting to get pretty short on the place. So having somewhere else to go with livestock would have been a major blessing for them. But ground that they were counting on for grazing is sitting under 5 foot of water right now. I know we're having some issues south of West Monroe. A lot of that's hay ground through that part of the world, and these guys are used to dealing with some backwater issues in the spring, but it's just taking forever getting out of here. Matter of fact, last Friday, whenever I was headed to that Operation Union Parish I just referenced, I was on interstate crossing through the Tremont Bottom in Calhoun, Louisiana. And that's an area where the water typically gets out of there very quickly due to the elevation change going to the Ouachita River. And the water was backed up clean to interstate. So that just illustrates how slow this water is getting out of here. And it's not that it's slow getting out of here. It's just that it's so much water trying to find its way to the Gulf, and it just doesn't have a quicker outlet than find its way to the Ouachita, then on the Black Red, and then the Atchafalaya, and then getting on out of here. But we're dealing with some backwater issues. Its tributaries areas are backed up as well. So all our low-lying areas that are prone to flooding are either so saturated with water that it's borderline like jello, where they do got a slick of water on them. The water has helped us. The rainfall has helped us keep our forages rocking. We are having outstanding forage growth right now. The soil temps pretty solid. Our day temps have not got to these scorching levels where we start seeing it impacting our forage growth. We've had adequate rainfall, of course, like I just mentioned. But one thing I wanted to comment on from a pasture standpoint, and Lee and Brittany might disagree with me, or they might be right on board with me. This has probably been one of the best clover years in recent memory. I can think of some ryegrass years that'll match or top what we had this year, but as far as clover production, this has been probably one of the best years that I've seen in my career in the last 15 years or so. I was on a place in Union today, and I was just amazed at how much clover was still out there and available to them, which that's in due part to climate and secondly to good management from the producer. But it's just been a fabulous year that we are still enjoying the fruits of. Whenever we start getting to these scorching temperatures, we'll see a lot of that go the other way. But as long as these temperatures stay moderated, we've got a little bit more time left grazing legumes there. We will be getting ready here pretty quick. Some people might have already started, but be getting ready pretty quick to start weaning some of these fall-born calves. And normally, whenever we're weaning fall-born calves in the summertime, we're always worried about dry, dusty pens, adding stress on the animal, respiratory diseases. It doesn't look like we're going to be fighting that this year. It looks like mud's going to be the big fight in the weaning pens this year. So if you could get some rock or get some drainage going where you can keep these weaning pens in better condition, that'll go a long ways towards benefiting you. Y'all know that when calves are fighting muddy pens, they're burning more energy than they have to at a time when they're already abnormally stressed. So that's just another stressor. It's an added stressor in a period of time of that animal's life where it's already at a very high stress level. And that has implications in a lot of different ways. So be working on your pens now, getting them ready. If you're planning on weaning in a few weeks, start your preparations now. Make sure your pens are as dry as you can get them. Make sure that the corrals are in good enough shape to hold the animals. Make sure that, depending on what kind of weaning you do, like if you're doing fence line weaning, make sure that that fence is in good shape. Because if it's not, you'll go out there the next day and find that your animals have unweaned themselves and are back in the pasture. Nothing will tell you where you got a hole in a fence quicker than a cow and a calf going back and forth up and down it repetitively till everybody settles down. Make sure you got your meds on hand, everything you're going to need for the weaning. If you banded, make sure you got bands. Just go through the list right now ahead of weaning. Make sure you got everything that you need before it's too late, before you got a pen full of balling calves that you're dealing with on top of everything else. Now's a easy time to get things lined out. Like I said, mud's going to be a fight this year, but having said that, I know it can turn off dry. So this report might sound totally different in 4 weeks or heck 2 weeks whenever we do the next one. But right now, mud is the battle. All right, gang, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton on to Brittany, I do believe.
Wait just a second. We're going to transition in between. So just to add to what Tripp's saying on that, today we're looking at first set of calf hood vaccinations for our springborn calves. So keep that in mind too as you start doing. We're going to do pregnancy determination on those that we artificially inseminated, those females that we artificially inseminated, and are planning fly tags. We've talked about that a little bit on some of these last few news updates, but also planning first set of vaccinations for those springborn calves too. So in regards to the respiratory, it might not be dry, but some of these temperature swings might still work on some of those calves too. I think it's starting to warm up and stay, but a week ago when I got my truck, it was 48, I think, last Monday morning. And then I drove down to a meet that night and it was in mid 80s. So just be mindful of that as well. And I think we're going to turn it over to Brittany. I know she's going to touch on the New World screwworm update, but I'm picking on Trip because in our last news update, I said, don't say the word Black Swan event because we were talking about markets and how things can go wrong. And now we've shut our southern border imports. So Brittany, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ashley. And then yes, just to to echo what Tripp said, we've received a lot of rain in our area as well. Just I'm up north of that I-10 corridor, north of US 190 over in that area. St. Landry Parish also announced over the weekend that they would be shutting down their waterways, just kind of let that water go down and whatnot over there. So we will hopefully, hopefully we'll see some of this rain, cut back a little bit, give things a chance to catch up and whatnot. But just, to add on to what Tripp said, yes, it's definitely been a problem in our part of the state down here as well. And in the news, I believe it was yesterday, I think that the news dropped about so U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins announced the suspension of live cattle, horse, and bison imports through U.S. ports of entry along the southern border due to the continued and rapid northward spread of the New World screwworm in Mexico. So I believe the reason for this was it was located as far north as Veracruz, which is about 700 miles from the U.S. border. When we transition over to Lee in just a bit, he's going to talk about just what the market implications are that of that and what that's going to look like. But just so, just in case you're not familiar, I'm sure many of us have heard the name by now at this point, that since this has been going on for a little bit. So what the New World screwworm, it's the parasites, they're fly larvae that reportedly can burrow into the membrane of a full-grown cow and cause an infection that can possibly kill the animal within 2 weeks. So that is definitely something that we do not want to be spreading here into the U.S. As we already have, our low cattle inventory numbers as it is, and we don't want to see something like that happen here. So like I said, Lee will transition and talk about that in our markets. But just before I get to that, I did just want to remind everyone, I know on our Facebook page, we did post about an event that I'm hosting over at Dominique's Stockyard in Opelousas next week on May 22nd. It's going to be just a beef cattle producer meeting that we're putting on. And I would love, everybody's welcome to come. That if you're in the area, if you want to make the trip, we'll have some good topics to talk about based on some feedback that I received from some of our producers just through our advisory process this past year. So hoping for a good turnout for that. If you do plan on attending, just please reach out to me. My office phone number and email are both on that flyer, and just let me know. So hopefully I can get a good meal going for y'all, and then we'll have a really good evening over there. So just with that, I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Lee, and he'll touch on our markets.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Brittany. I'm
Brittany.
a little slow on the trigger here today, and I believe my internet's running a little behind as well. So apologies if I have any problems. I'm sure these folks will let me know if I have any issue. As far as the Northwest region and Northwest part of the state goes, ditto what Tripp said about the wet conditions. My goodness, we've received quite a bit of rainfall. Last couple of weeks, it's really come in some pretty good slugs and all come at once. Been some flooding issues here and there, particularly on the low-lying grounds, the flat grounds along the Red River Valley. It's been pretty wet, pretty soggy time for sure. Signs things drying out, maybe just a little bit. The hill ground's drying just a little bit, and so hoping to see just a little bit of drying continued on into the next week or so. Downside to the weather, folks, I don't want to burst anybody's bubbles. I don't want to pop anybody's bubbles here, but I tell you what, the 7-day forecast, the high temperatures in the mid-90s starting this week, at least up my way they are. And I even saw some record heat over into Texas and everything like that forecast for the later part of this week. And folks, it's getting that time of year, we're starting to transition in this summertime period. But boy, what a shock to the system that's going to be, wearing jackets yesterday to run an air conditioner full tilt coming up in the latter part of this week. Same thing in Northwest Louisiana on clover. It has been the best clover year, and it's hard for me to say that. I mean, it's all relative, I guess, and I'm sure somebody listening here might throw their hat down and stomp on it and say, my clover stumped this year. Well, that's your prerogative, but I tell you what, I sure looked at some good stuff. Not just at one or two farms, but at many, many farms that I travel along. We've talked about it quite a bit, but the cattle industry in Northwest Louisiana just depends so heavily on white clover, on volunteer clover, crimson too, and it's just such ingrained into the industry up our way that it really can make a difference and swing things as far as profitability goes, and it certainly has a big impact on hay production, everything like that. If we get into the highs in the 90s, though, folks, that's going to kind of finish out this year's cool season forages. They don't cotton too much to 90+ degrees. Ryegrass or the cereal grains are mostly done now, but clover sure doesn't like it either. The wet soil conditions will help kind of dull the effects of these high temperatures, but it's time to move on, folks. And with that, just want to make mention, folks, that it was such a good clover year. The one downside to clover is if you don't watch it, if you don't either graze it out or spray it out or hay it out or something, you can wind up losing a warm season stand of grass from it. It's a blessing, but it's too much of a good thing. It's sometimes not always a good thing. And so you got to get that stuff off of there and make way for that Bermuda and Bahia grass. Bermuda grass looks like it's lagging maybe just a little bit. And I think that may be due to maybe just a touch cooler soil temps than normal, but I'm not really willing to go out on a limb that far. But it just looks like some of the fields where folks have really controlled the cool season forages, looks like the warm season grass of Bermuda and such is having just a little bit of a tougher time. I'm sure that 90 degrees will sure remedy that. Bermuda grass loves these hot, humid days and everything like that. Many folks were able to get the first cutting of hay accomplished during that 7-10 day period we had with no rainfall. It's been back about right before Easter for us. And so that was really a boon. But the ones that hadn't, boy, they've been in time of it. I can name some names, folks, some friends of ours. They cut some hay right before some rain events, and it's thoroughly washed. How about that? It's thoroughly washed and good, clean hay for sure. going in the bale. But your hearts go out to those folks, because you don't get to make good first cutting hay every year in Louisiana. It's more of a privilege than a right, I guess, up our way, as far as that goes. Brittany alluded to this screw worm business and thing like that. I can remember the old folks talking about screw worms back years ago, and it's not been in my lifetime. And I dare say I'm the oldest in this current cadre of people, but I don't remember it. But my grandfather's time, maybe even my dad's time, but it was definitely an issue. And folks, from what I've heard, it was a gigantic pain in the neck. The eradication was tremendous. Ashley shaking her head. I think Texas may have fared a little worse screwworm wise than what Louisiana had it. But I remember my grandfather talking about how big a pain it was penning cattle because they had to repeatedly treat cattle. And we're talking about once a week, twice a week, once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or something like that. But it was a gigantic effort uh, to eradicate in the southern United States. And I'll say this, it's no matter where you fall on politics, we don't need anything like that in the U.S. I've seen a lot of knee jerk reaction to this, and folks making comments, oh, it's good, we don't need them anyway. Folks, you realize that these cattle aren't fat cattle coming in from Mexico. These are calves usually coming in, and a lot of the U.S. cattle industry, a lot of the U.S. beef industry. I may make some folks mad when I tell y'all this, and I don't intend to. I'm just stating the sheer facts. These cattle are light grazing weight calves coming across. These are 400 to 700 pound cattle coming in, maybe a few heavier than that, but not very many. And folks, what they're doing is folks on the U.S. side buy them and bring them in, or bring them in and buy them, and they turn around and graze them and then either feed them or sell them to be fed. So, folks in the U.S. cattle producers do make some money on these cattle. And I know one in particular, a friend of mine, whose entire business model is built on Mexican born calves and buying them and grazing them during the warm seasons. So, heart goes out to folks. It's really going to have a disruption as far as that goes. But we can't stand to have those things in our country. And hopefully USDA will get things ironed out with the Mexican authorities and be able to proceed on. You can imagine the results on this market. I apologize, Brittany. I told you I was just going to talk about the market implications, but you know me, I get on a soapbox and get on the roll, and it's just like listening to your crazy neighbor rant. You just got to let him, wind himself out. So anyway, the effects on the cattle markets are understandable. Our cattle markets, you might go so far as say, are overheated as they are, and that's just fuel to the fire, folks. And as far as the futures market go on feeder cattle futures, as of the closing today, May, which is a spot month on those feeder cattle futures, closed up 5.12. I think it's like 303 or something like that. I don't have the data in front of me, but anyway, just reinforced, I would say, what the good news and the positive things that you're hearing about the cattle industry right now and the cattle markets. The strength in the cattle markets is phenomenal right now, folks. And of course, it's that way in Louisiana, and the data that we see coming out of Louisiana livestock auctions. And I'll jump right into the market report. Far as that goes. And so this, the market report, as a reminder, this is self-reported numbers, folks. We don't have anybody in these barns grading these cattle. So one barn could run exclusively 400 head of Corrientes, or they could have been some of the best number one beef calves you ever seen in your life. We have no way of knowing. All we can go off of is weights and prices and a little bit of quality when it comes to the killing cows. But I digress. These are self-reported numbers. I like to use them more as a tool to track trends in the cattle market, movements within the cattle market over time. So this news update, this market report covers the period April 28th through May the 12th. And this is what the average of the reported prices came out to be. On 5 to 6 weight steers, that's 500, 600 pound steers. Average of the prices was $2.79 per pound to $3.58 per pound. 1.59% increase over the last news update. On the 5 to 6 weight heifers, $2.58 a pound to $3.41. That's a 1.87% increase. On the cull cows, the killing cows, average of the prices was $1.20 to $1.58, 1.83% increase. Cull bulls, $1.52 per pound to $1.90. It's 9.2% increase. Bred cows, average of the high prices paid for bred cows is $3,100 per head. And average high prices paid on pairs is $3,866.67. Folks, I can tell y'all as far as the replacement cows go, they are just red hot. I don't know any other way to put it. They're just, the market is extremely, extremely good right now on these replacement cows. You're hearing there for a little while. You go back and listen to these reports a couple of months ago, and we would make a comment, oh my goodness, we saw a $3,000 bred heifer sale, or I saw a pair bring $4,000. Folks, that's everywhere. All of them are seeing that now. The only reason they may not be reported in the averages is they didn't come to town. It's leaving many people with some hard choices, folks, some really hard choices. It's one thing to make a decision about whether you're going to stay in the cattle business or you're going to go whenever cattle prices are fairly flat or you know, at normal levels. But when you get to levels this high, when you look out across a pasture of cattle, and it doesn't have to be very many, and you go to figuring up, you know, some even $3,000 pairs or calves worth $2,000, and the cow might bring 1,500 or two, you know, almost two just by herself. That's a hard equation right there, folks. I've heard many people. I've talked to many people in the last few weeks that are struggling with the decision. Do we cut back a little bit? Do we just sell completely out right now? Well, when can we buy back in if we do sell out? And I'm not here offering any answers, folks. I don't have the answers. This is unprecedented times when it comes to the cattle market, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we go throughout the rest of this year for sure. To wind up just a little bit, we've had this news update for a while now, and we use it, of course, to announce great events. We talked about our Beef and Forage Field Day at the Hill Farm. I believe we touched on that the last news update. I hope we did. I don't think I was on there, but we had a really great attendance for that. Ashley nodding her head, so she talked about that. Nothing like going off script, folks. You know what I mean? And we've got a good event coming up in June the 12th. We're having a hay day. It's a one-day event focused solely on hay production. We're going to really be highlighting these equipment companies. It's going to be a great time to come out and learn some more from these equipment dealers about their equipment. We're going to be talking about some armyworm control, some Bermuda grass varieties as well, and some weed control updates as well. So look forward to having y'all. That's going to be in Red River Parish. That's going to be in Coushatta. Get in touch with any of us and we'll get you a flyer on it, get you an address and everything. Look forward to seeing you there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you, sir. I don't have a whole lot to add other than I can say the clover traveled or did well, not really traveled, did well all through the state. I've been traveling, I guess, and I've been in South Louisiana a good bit, and producers all up and down I-10 and south of I-10 have said that their clovers perform really well too. I meant to mention that earlier. I don't have any events that I can think of to add to that. All of our master cattlemen have kicked off or are finishing. Brittany's wrapping hers up tonight. Tripp and Lee wrapped theirs up last week, and then there's still a few more that are ongoing through the end of the month and through the beginning of June. So all of those are taking place. The one thing that I do want to add to this, and I feel like I'm forgetting something else. If I do, I'll add it to the description. But we have a graduate student that is working on a survey of producers implementing best management practices. It's all anonymous, and it takes maybe 10 minutes of your time. She does need this for her degree, So please help Mattie out in getting her master's in ag economics. This is tied back to a grant that I know you've heard me talk about. We call it the high-low grant, but looking at high management input versus low management input. 50% of those that take the survey do win a forage test, a free forage test from us. So at the end, if you're a winner, it'll say you're a winner. Please add in your email, and then we get a forage test to you. So I'm going to put the link to that survey. Again, it takes about 10 minutes. Please help us out, help Mattie out, so she can get her thesis written and get that done. I think that that's all that we have. I know that I'm forgetting something, but as you can see, I'm sitting in my truck on my way to another master cattleman. I'm sure it'll click in my brain and I'll put it into the video and podcast description when it does. And we'll see y'all again in a couple of weeks.